Welcome everyone to tonight's Jefferson County School Board Candidate Forum. My name is Jonna Levine and I am co-chair of Support Jeffco Kids.
My name is Kay Slater and I am your Jeffco PTA president. I'm so excited to see so many of you show up to support our Jefferson County kids and our schools. As you know, the school board is a central player in assuring high quality, equitable education for all children. A strong school board is necessary for our schools to thrive.
The Jefferson County Board of Education is the policymaking body of the school district. Its powers and duties are set by state law. The board is responsible for educational planning and evaluation, staffing and appraisals, school facilities, financial resources, and communication. The board acts as a court of appeal for staff members, students, and the public on issues involving board policy or implementation of that policy. These elected positions come with no pay other than reimbursements for actual expenses, but a lot of late nights and volumes of documents to review. School board races are nonpartisan.
PTA takes no position on candidates as a nonprofit organization, but we do encourage voters to be well informed and to participate in all elections.
Support Jeffco Kids is a 501c4 nonprofit organization and does endorse candidates. Following this forum, our board will meet and endorse candidates.
We ask that everyone other than the presenters please leave your camera and microphone off during the forum to avoid interruptions of the forum. Please follow the directions and rules that you were sent with the link to this event via email. Next, we have an election update from Jefferson County Elections Director, Drake Ramke.
Hi, everyone. Can you hear me all right? Awesome. So yeah, like she said, my name is Drake Ramke. I am the Elections Director for Jefferson County, and I'm just here to give you a quick when, where, how for the November election. So I'm gonna start with it's actually a what, when, how. So I'll start with the what. On this November's election on the ballot in Jefferson County, of course, we're gonna have 3 school board races that we're talking about today. And then there are going to be 3 statewide initiatives that are also on the ballot. And then depending on where you live in Jeffco, you might have local city council races or municipality races or some special district ballot initiatives. So depending on where you live, your ballot's going to look a little different. When, so this is going to be when do we mail out ballots? We have already mailed out ballots to overseas and military voters. And then the other 99% of the ballots are going to be dropped at the United States Postal Service, the General Mail facility in Denver on October 8th. So look for your ballots to show up in your mailbox the week of the 11th. If you don't hear anything or have anything in your mailbox by the 18th, please reach out to our office and we'll get you all squared away. Just some other information on the when. The last day to vote is November 2nd at 7 p.m. So please make sure your ballot is back to us by then. I do not recommend mailing your ballot after the 25th. Please use one of the 36 drop box locations around the county. And then where, that brings me to where to drop off your ballot. So like I mentioned, we have 36 drop boxes throughout the county. That's more than double what we had no less than 2 years ago. So we are building up the infrastructure for you all. I mentioned you can also mail it in. I do not recommend that after the 25th of October, just because the turnaround time at the post office, I'd play it safe and drop it off at one of the boxes or one of our 8 VSPCs, which is a voter service and polling center. Voter service and polling centers will open up in 2 phases. The first phase will open up October 25th and run Monday through Saturday, off on Sunday, and then again on the Monday and Tuesday, which is November 1st and November 2nd. We have 2 additional sites opening up on the Monday and Tuesday. Those are going to be at the School of Mines and one other school. So yeah, one other thing I wanted to add on that is we have a system called Ballot Tracks. So if you need to track your ballot through the process at all, whether it's in the mail, been returned to us, or been accepted for counting, you can get online at votejeffco.com, and all the information is there to check the status of your ballot, update your registration, find vote locations. We have an interactive map for drop boxes and everything. So that's kind of just a high level overview of what's happening. Like I mentioned, if you have any other questions, please visit votejeffco.com. We'll have details on everything from security, drop boxes, VSPCs, and deadlines. With that, thank you and go vote.
Thank you, Drake. Now we'd like to thank our Superintendent, Tracy Dorland, who will give you an update on the state of Jeffco schools.
Hello, good evening. My name is Tracy Dorland. Thank you, Jonna. Thank you, Support Jeffco Kids and the Jeffco PTA for sponsoring this event for our community to get to know our board candidates. I'm very excited to be here with all of you this evening, and I do have a few slides that I want to share with you as I talk to you a little bit about the school district and some areas of focus that I am interested in all of us talking about. Can you see, Jonna, can you see my, yep, it says participants can now see my slides. So that's great news. So again, good evening. My name is Tracy. I'm the superintendent in Jeffco. I am very proud to be a parent in Jeffco, a community member, and it is an honor to serve the district in this capacity. I started as superintendent in April of 2021, so just about 5 months ago, and I have learned a lot about Jeffco in the last 5 months. The slide I'm showing you here just talks, I love this slide because it shows the demographics of our community and it really explains who we serve in Jeffco. You can see at the top left over here, out of our pre-K-12 students, we have about 11% who are students on IEPs. We have about 8.4% in the next circle over who are English learners. We then down on the bigger pie chart on the left, you can see the demographic makeup of the ethnicity of students who we serve. The majority are white at 66%. Hispanic is the next largest group at a little over 24%. And then you can see the breakout of other populations of students that we serve demographically and ethnically. And finally, over here on the right side, you can see the free and reduced lunch and non-free and reduced lunch eligible breakout at 30% and 70%, and the gifted and talented breakout at 11.6 and 88.4. So it just shows you a little bit about the demographics of the students we serve. And I think it's a very important part of the story in terms of where we are as a district currently and where we need to go to make sure that our community and our board members understand the different populations of students we serve. The next slide is a slide that will summarize a little bit work that I've been doing to study and research the data in Jeffco. I could spend lots of time sharing lots of slides around some data analysis that I've looked at. But tonight, because I want to prioritize time for our candidates, I just want to share with you the bottom line in terms of some analysis that I've started around our data in Jeffco. We have a lot to be proud of. Our graduation rates are consistently beating the state of Colorado's graduation rates over time. So that's definitely a positive trend in the right direction for Jeffco. We also have done an incredible amount of work expanding internships, certification, and concurrent enrollment opportunities. We actually last year had over 3,000, almost 3,700 concurrent enrollment classes where our high school students were able to receive college credit for the work they were doing in one of our coursework, in one of our classes in Jeffco. So that's incredible. We also have incredible internships that are part of the program. And we know we just opened a third campus for Warren Tech, which is Warren Tech South. It's next to Dakota Ridge on the Dakota Ridge campus. We had our ribbon cutting last week. It's an incredible opportunity for us to expand programs for our students and the opportunity for children to explore careers prior to being able to make decisions about where they're headed for post-secondary workforce and college opportunities. So really excited about that expansion in terms of internships, certifications, concurrent enrollment, and career and technical education in Jeffco. So much to be proud of in that category of our work. We have, over the last few years, helped more students at the early literacy level make progress out of the lowest quartile of reading performance. Unfortunately, we also have more students who start at the lowest quartile. And so sometimes the data looks a little off, but more kids are moving out of that lower quartile than in prior years, which is a really good success. And finally, when we look at our data, our growth data in particular from 2017 to 2019, the one category of students that does not decline in their growth performance between those years is our special education students. They actually grew in growth by 1%. And I think that's something to celebrate, especially for all of our special education teachers and paraprofessionals who support our students. So those are some things that we have to be proud of. I will also tell you that we have many challenges in Jeffco. And first and foremost on my mind is that we have had declining student achievement rates from 2017 on. And the pandemic has only exacerbated some of that, not just for Jeffco, for all districts, but even prior to the pandemic, we were not seeing a positive trend and trajectory for our student achievement results, especially in terms of the growth for our students. And this is not just in reading or literacy, it's also in mathematics. And so I think that's important for our community to know, and it causes me a sense of urgency around the work that we need to do with both our current board and the future board that will be onboarding in December. I also want to share that as I've looked at graduation rates, while I'm proud that we're beating the state, I think that we also need to look for different metrics other than just our state performance with graduation to make sure that we are, for example, looking at peer districts across the nation and making sure that we are doing well by graduation rates, not just compared to the state of Colorado, but other places that have really high standards. We also know, as I've disaggregated the data, I also can tell you that the students who are not graduating on time with either their 4-year or 7-year cohorts are disproportionately free and reduced lunch eligible, male, and minority. So it's important that we take a look at not just our successes, but where we're not doing well, what's happening for those students and who are they, so that we can target strategies to address those needs. And finally, we have additional impacts, as I mentioned before, on learning because students lost learning time due to the pandemic. And we need to be strategic and thoughtful about investments with our federal stimulus funds to support that learning loss over the next 3 to 5 years. In addition to just the improvement work that I'm looking forward to doing with this new board. So that's a summary of some information for you all and for our candidates this evening in terms of, the analysis that I've done to date around our data and some of the patterns and trends that have emerged. And then finally, I will just share that I do, based on the data analysis and based on lots of conversation, time in our schools. I think I've been to 60 campuses so far, and I've talked to a lot of principals, many teachers, and spent a lot of time with the central team. I have 5 areas of focus that I really feel are the just right areas for us to begin leaning into as we think about how to take Jeffco from being the wonderful and amazing district it is to being really nationally recognized as one of the top performing districts in the United States. And so here they are. I believe we need to find the just right balance between system coherence and school-based autonomy. High-performing school districts have systems in place that schools can leverage to make sure that they have what they need to do the improvement work they need to do at the school site. And we are not balanced in the right way right now, and we need to find that balance in everything we do. I'm really interested in maximizing the efficiency of our resources, aligned to the goal of improved student achievement, particularly focused on closing achievement gaps. I am really excited to make sure that I understand where our investments and resources are aligned and what are the outcomes that we're receiving based on those investments and the alignment of those resources. We, as I mentioned before, need to support students with additional learning opportunities to make up for lost instructional time given the pandemic. And that's work that we're actively engaged in right now in terms of thinking about our strategy there. I'm also interested in exploring how our district is organized to support schools with improved student achievement and social emotional well-being. I believe that the central office exists for 3 reasons: to support schools, to model the way, and to share a vision. And so we need to make sure that the central office is organized in a way that is most supportive to our school sites, because we exist to help them, support them, and be there for them in the work they do for kids and families every day. And I'm actively engaged in a review of how we're organized as a district on the academic side of the house to make sure that the academic supports are in place and directly supporting the schools. And finally, and probably always at the forefront of what we have to do as a school district, is focus on relationships, collaboration, and a positive climate and culture with our stakeholders, especially our students and our families and our staff. And so, so I've been spending a lot of time with people, really trying to be extremely present with them, and making sure that people know I'm here because I care about families, I care about students, and I care about the staff who support them every day. And I want to be side by side in the work with people. I want people to know how much I care, and I want to do the hard work. So you have 7 candidates with you or with us this evening who I congratulate on making a decision to, I'm going to stop sharing now. I'm making a decision to run for school board. It is not a job that anybody should take lightly. It's incredibly important. I think the fact that we have 7 candidates is great evidence of the tremendous commitment that the Jeffco community has to our schools. And I'm so proud of that, and so impressed and grateful to be a superintendent in a place where we do have so much community support. And so I know that I'm looking forward to working with whoever comes onto our board in a way that helps us, as I stated before, go from the great district that we are to a nationally recognized district, because Jeffco really can be a top district in this nation. And I'm so excited to work with the board in an effort to be the best that Jeffco can be. So welcome to our candidates. Thank you, Jonna, for the opportunity to speak tonight. And I will hand it back over to you so that we can prioritize the rest of the time on the process that you have envisioned.
Thanks, Tracy. Tonight's moderator for the forum will be Mr. Dave Thomas. A little about Mr. Thomas. He's a product of Jefferson County Public Schools, having attended Slater Elementary, Manning Junior High, and Golden High School. He's also a graduate of Phillips University in Enid, Oklahoma, and CU Law School. A longtime advocate for public education in Jeffco schools, he was elected to the Jeffco Board of Education November 2007, where he served for 4 years, 2 as president of the board. Additionally, Mr. Thomas has served in elected office as district attorney for Jefferson and Gilpin counties, where he served for 12 years and was appointed executive director of Colorado Department of Public Safety for 6 years under Governor Roy Romer. He has spent the last 12 years as a criminal defense attorney. Mr. Thomas continues to advocate for and support our public schools, as evidenced by his participation this evening as moderator. Many thanks to Mr. Thomas for his service.
Sorry. Finally, a note about structure. Questions have been organized in accordance with past hosted forums and will be asked by our moderator, Mr. Thomas, to the panelists. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer the question. Candidates, please listen to our timer. We'll announce when your time is up. Please stop talking when your time has ended. Your microphone will be muted by one of our tech volunteers following the announcement.
This season, 3 seats are up for election: Districts 1, 2, and 5. Our candidates tonight are District 1, Danielle Varda and Jeffrey Wilhite. District 2, David Johnson, Paula Reed, and Teresa Shelton. And District 5, Kathy Mix and Mary Parker. We will begin the forum with introductions by each candidate. So without further ado, Dave, please take it away.
Always got to remember to unmute yourself. There are 7 questions which I will be asking, and there's also a introduction, which I'm going to in just a second, and closing statements that are 1 minute long. This forum, therefore, will last a little over an hour and a half, closer probably to 2 hours. And you don't have to take your full 2 minutes if you don't want to, but that's the maximum. I will announce the order of people answering my questions when I get to each question. For introductions, this is the order: Danielle Varda, Jeffrey Wilhite, Dave Johnson, Paula Reed, Teresa Shelton, Kathy Mix, and Mary Parker, and it will change on each question. So Danielle, it's your turn.
Well, good evening. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I am Dr. Danielle Varda. I'm running District 1. I've devoted my entire life to public service, and I'm running for this office because I desire to serve this community in a capacity that's focused on helping kids succeed. I believe I have the leadership skills and experience to serve on this board. I'm the mother of 3 Jeffco girls. I have a 2nd and 4th grader at Weber Elementary and a 7th grader at Moore Middle School. I'm a regular volunteer in the classroom, and I just began my 4th year at Weber's as Weber's SAC chair, and I am a member of my schools and Jeffco PTA. In short, I'm a mom with 3 girls that love their teachers and schools, and one that cares deeply about how we can better support both. A little more about me: after getting my PhD in 2008, I took a job as a policy scientist at the Rand Corporation and began my career as a data scientist and technologist focused on networks and collaboration. And 3 years later, I took a job as a professor at the University of Colorado, Denver in the School of Public Affairs, where I just started my 15th year as a tenured professor. And as an entrepreneur and business owner, I run a $2 million health technology social enterprise that's allowed me to take my research focus on strengthening social connectedness for kids and families and turn that into technology innovations that give us new voice for talking about our mental and behavioral health. But I always say my hardest job is getting my 3 kids up in the morning and out to school. There's 3 things that I'm focused on. First, it's critical that we focus on the mental health and well-being of our kids, teachers, and families. Second, I'd like to see expansion of Jeffco's focus on school to career programming, emphasizing partnerships with business, nonprofits, and government. And third, we have a critical teacher and staff shortage right now, and I think we need to address this with more support, fair compensation, so that Jeffco is a competitive place to work, to raise a family, and to build promising futures. I look forward to this forum today and your vote. Thank you.
It's okay, Dave, to start. Can't hear you. So I'm going to head and start because I can't hear Dave, but
Go ahead.
All right, we're ready?
I got your back. Jeffrey.
Okay, all right, we'll start again.
Okay.
So I'm Jeff Wilhite. I'm running for the Jeffco Board of Education in District 1 and the father of 2 Jeffco graduates of Evergreen schools who happen to share the same birthday. I have long been involved in education at the state, district, and school level. I was involved with the Colorado State Educational Success Task Force, as a member of the Jeffco District Accountability Committee, a member of the Capital Asset Advisory Committee for 3.5 years. I was a member of the 2018 Campaign Committee to pass 5A and 5B, co-founder and current coordinator of the Jeffco Charter School Consortium, board member of Evergreen High School Foundation. I served as the president of the Evergreen Band Booster Club, which was interesting. And my involvement with charter schools is I was board chairman and treasurer of both Mountain Phoenix Community School and Rocky Mountain Academy of Evergreen, totaling 9 years of board service. My business for the past 25 years was the owner of a construction loan lending company. For me, stewardship is my primary tenet for how I will conduct my approach to being on the board. As a board member, we are given the responsibility of making important decisions that affect all aspects of the district: the bus drivers, the food workers, the janitors, the administrative staff, the superintendent, and of course, our teachers. If we make those decisions wisely and responsibly and transparently, our primary goal of providing an excellent educational environment for our students will result. Stewardship will be the heart of my priorities. Stewardship of taxpayers' dollars, stewardship of parent choice, stewardship of educational achievement, and stewardship of a professionally run governance. Thank you.
David Johnson.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for letting me having the opportunity to join tonight and welcome. My name is Dave Johnson. I'm running for District 2. I am the father of a 8th grade Evergreen Middle School girl and have a wife where we've been married for 20 years. I think that there are 3 main priorities for Jefferson County that we're facing today. I believe that the first one is we have to keep our students safe. And I think that that starts with their physical health, and then it also incorporates their emotional and mental health. I think that we have to, as a district, conduct ourselves with strong financial performance. And third of all, I think that we have to focus on student achievement. I mean, ultimately, our main goal as a school district is to educate our students. I've spent the last 25 years running behavioral health organizations. Prior to that, I was a certified teacher in Illinois, Arizona, and Colorado, and was also a certified principal. I've worked mainly with young adults and adolescents, working with resistant clients, and traveled the country running organizations and working with school districts, universities, colleges, hospitals, and working with students who didn't necessarily fit into the normal education model. For the last 7 years, I was on the school accountability committee. And then the last 4 years, I was the articulation area for the Mountain region. And 3 of those years, I was the budget chair for the district accountability committee. So I understand the budget of Jefferson County very intimately. And when it comes to student achievement, I've worked with, again, dozens of school districts and understand what it takes to govern and work cooperatively with a board of directors to receive positive outcomes. I think that what we're looking at here is a 5-person board working with a new superintendent and a new leadership team that's going to require strong cooperation, strong collaboration, and independent agendas. Thank you.
Paula Reed.
My name is Paula Reed, and I'm running in District 2. I am a Jeffco woman through and through. I graduated from Pomona High School. I married a Green Mountain grad, and I raised 2 Green Mountain graduates. I also taught at Columbine High School for 30 years. I taught briefly at Lasley Elementary School. In my time at Columbine, I also was a dean of students. So I've had a chance to look at education from a lot of different viewpoints. While I was teaching at Columbine, I taught speech and debate, which tended to really attract the high achieving students who were very traditionally successful. And I also taught general education classes, so sort of your garden variety, 9th and 10th graders, all the different kinds of kids that show up in those classes. And I taught in a program called Alternative Cooperative Education, which is for at-risk students to intervene before they drop out of school. So I've had a chance too to see that indeed one size does not fit all, that students do need choices. The students that I taught very often were in home situations where a choice outside of their neighborhood really was not viable. Their families just didn't have the wherewithal to navigate the system or to get them to schools that were far away. So one of my real passions is having very strong neighborhood schools available to every child with choices in that school to cover the entire scope of the kinds of kids that we teach. That's what's really important to me. And because I was an educator, I know how the policies that are enacted in the education center ultimately impact classrooms and how that impacts student learning. And that will be the #1 thing that I think about with every decision that we make. How will this affect actual students?
Teresa Shelton.
Good evening. First off, let me thank Jeffco PTA, Support Jeffco Kids, for making this possible for all of us to be here tonight. My name is Teresa. and my husband and I have 3 children. Our oldest is a recent college graduate and a Golden High and Bell Middle alum, just like my husband. And our daughters just recently started middle school here in Jeffco. But before telling you more about why I'm here tonight, there is one detail about me that I hope you will remember. I love radishes. You see, I grew up on a vegetable farm just outside of Denver, and my 12 siblings and I bunched radishes every day from Memorial Day to Labor Day with our parents. And if anyone here ever worked on a farm, you know exactly what I mean when I say I could not wait for summer to end and school to start in the fall. I loved school, and it is my public education that allowed me to trade the radish fields for an accounting degree. I became a CPA, and I have spent the last 35 years analyzing and auditing financial statements, providing complete and transparent financial information to stockholders, and overseeing the financial and operational aspects of a $2 billion financial services firm. I have also had the opportunity to serve on several boards, including Colorado State University's Accounting and Advisory Board for the last 6 years. But I also bring another very unique perspective to serving on Jeffco's board. My kids are attending Jeffco schools a decade apart. That means I know how good Jeffco schools once were, but have also witnessed the significant declines in academic achievement. As the 37th largest school district in the country, we can do better. And we have over $1 billion to spend each year to make that happen. I believe we can return Jeffco to the premier school district it once was, and I look forward to sharing with you all tonight my goals and priorities to get us there. Thank you.
Kathy Mix.
Hello, thank you to everyone watching, and thank you to all of our hosts. I'm Kathy Mix, and I am also a product of Jeffco Public Schools. I'm running for the school board because I care deeply about all of our kids and their futures. I have been associated with and serving Jeffco schools for 30 years. I see a need for strong leadership on the board, and I have the skills, experience, and passion required to fill that need and get Jeffco schools back on top. So a little about myself. I've been married for 35 years. I have 3 grown children. My entire family graduated from Jeffco schools. We all had outstanding educations and experiences. I graduated from Lakewood High School. My husband, Wheat Ridge, our oldest daughter graduated from Columbine, and our 2 younger sons graduated from Chatfield. I attended the Colorado School of Mines in Golden, where I played basketball and volleyball. After Mines, I worked at Fiacol for 10 years as an engineering manager and as the lead solid propellant engineer for the space shuttle program. So I am literally a rocket scientist. I currently am the innovation leader for Johns Manville's building insulation business. I also serve on 3 boards for very large, very successful industry trade associations. These are billion-dollar trade associations, so I know how to govern. I was actively involved in the schools when my kids were enrolled for 17 years. I volunteered on PTA for many years. My mom was also president for many years, so I know how much work this is. So hats off to all of the PTA volunteers. I also coached volleyball at Columbine High School for 10 years. My kids are all doing well. They have great jobs and they're happy and secure. In my job now, I travel all over the country. Unfortunately, some of the things I see are not so great. There's widespread homelessness and there's hopelessness in many big cities. And when I see these people struggling like this, it breaks my heart. Jeffco has had a
Mary Parker.
Hello, my name is Mary Parker and I'm running in District 5, which is in the Columbine, Dakota Ridge, and Chatfield articulation areas. I have 2 daughters who are teachers in Jeffco Public Schools and 4 grandchildren who have graduated from or are attending Jeffco schools right now. Professionally, for 20 years, I was a systems engineer for Hewlett Packard in their business computing systems. And while there, I wrote and taught customer classes, including problem solving and decision making. Currently, my husband and I own a human resources consulting company that specializes in compensation and compliance. Additionally, I'm a certified parent educator and I taught parenting classes for 20 years. For the past 14 years, I've been a court-appointed special advocate, or CASA, working with neglected and abused children. My CASA experience included working with truant teenagers. And I saw two sisters in one of their hearings be handcuffed and taken through the same doors that convicted criminals go through. I literally saw the school to prison pipeline in front of my eyes. From my CASA training, I also learned that the number one predictor of whether or not a student will graduate from high school is the number of unexcused absences they have in third grade. We have to catch these kids early. On another case, I had two kiddos who were displaced so many times that they went to 3 different schools in the first 6 weeks of a school year. So I've seen how our schools must be prepared without any notice to accept new students, often traumatized ones who need much more than a seat in a classroom. They had no parental choice, and it was critical that the neighborhood schools had strong support staff for them. The driving passion of my life is supporting families and children, and I look forward to doing that as a member of the Jeffco School Board. Thank you.
I'm going to go to the first question, and here's the order in which you may respond. Paula Reed, Teresa Shelton, David Johnson, Mary Parker, Kathy Mix, Jeffrey Wilhite, Danielle Varda. And here's the question. There remains a lot of confusion from community members regarding public education funding allocation, and school district budget choices. What ideas do you have for partnering with the district to better engage the community for improved communication and transparency about Jeffco school issues? Paula.
Honestly, I feel like Jefferson County works really hard to communicate with the community around budgeting. So I'm always a little mystified by the idea of not having transparency. I feel like as a parent and as a teacher, I was frequently asked through surveys and other mechanisms how I felt that we should be spending school funding. I also know that with accountability committees, there are a number of ways that the community can participate. One of the things I found most valuable and that I would definitely like to continue doing was an interactive feature that they had on the Jefferson County website, where you could go in and actually say, okay, let's see what happens if we give all of our employees a 2% raise. And you could sort of see that suck up the budget. And then, try to figure out, okay, well, then where are we going to cut that? And what's going to happen with that? And so then you could say, well, but here's another thing I think is important. And let's give a little money there. And you're watching it just disappear again. And I think that was particularly effective. I heard a lot of people talk about how that really opened their eyes. So I think that there are things we can do mostly to get people to understand the enormity of the budget and what happens when you make even small adjustments to it.
Teresa.
Thank you. This is a great question because as the chair of our school accountability committee, that was the first thing I actually tried to do, because my understanding in our school accountability committee, we have kind of 3 priorities: family engagement, understanding and improving the budget as presented by our administrators, and then working on our unified improvement plan. The budget was key. I'm a CPA. I spent a lot of time trying to understand how the budget process works. It's not clear. And I will tell you, the SAC members that I would, that I worked with also found it rather confusing. I do think there are some things that we can do. Technology really makes sharing data pretty easy, but it's going to be really important, and it's hard to share the right data. So I think it's a 2-step process. I think educating our school accountability committees a little bit more on exactly how the funding model works. How much funding does the district get from the different sources, state, property taxes? How much money then does the school get, and what must it pay for? Those are really important, which help you make decisions at your school, like how many teachers should we have? Do we have any money for technology? Do we have money for security cameras? So educating our SACs is a great first step. And then the second step is I liked what Jeffco did this year, and they did try to involve the community in the budgeting process. I participated, but I think there are some improvements we can make. We can get data out and information out to members earlier, and we can make the process a little bit more collaborative so that people feel like they are actually having an opportunity to review things in advance and make and provide valuable input. So 2 steps, and thank you.
David?
Thank you. I would say that there's confusion over public funding of schools and its allocation because it's extremely confusing. It's an incredibly complex and confusing way about how you fund schools and how the state funds it and the federal funds it. And it's just really challenging. I remember my school finance class when I was going to be a certified principal. I remember it being one of the hardest classes I ever took. And I'm kind of a math dork. I mean, I find myself kind of good with numbers, and it was very challenging. And I'd like to just steal Paula's answer for the rest of them, because I thought that slide thing on the website a couple of years ago was awesome. You know, when I was on the DAC, we did this interactive website survey, and I think that we got tremendous data through the DAC and the budget subcommittee based on some of the information off the website. The only thing that I would say that we could add to it is continue to try to provide opportunities for the public to see that. I get the school newsletters, we get district newsletters, we get all those things, and to continue to always put in there information that gives access to the data and the financial metrics of what the district is doing. So it's constantly in front of the families and the parents, and they feel like they're always informed, and drive them back to the website and have those resources available, like the budget that's on the website and is very informative if you have the opportunity to go read it. But then when you do so, it's confusing and challenging. But again, it's just part of the process where school finance is an opportunity to really dive in there and understand how challenging this job is, and the job of the district staff and this job of this for the board is how difficult it's going to be. So, you know, that's the best I'm going to do. Thanks.
Mary?
In 2014, I attended something called the Citizens Budget Academy for the Jeffco School District. And it was over a couple nights, and we got a binder that was really thick. And from that, I learned that it's very complicated. The budget's complicated. And I don't think that they've held that academy again since that time. I do believe that the budget is so complicated, we really don't want the community, or it wouldn't help the community to start at that high level with that amount of detail. I personally think the community needs to know, why does my school not have an assistant principal? Or why are the special teachers in my school serving 3 different schools? They really care about what's happening in your own school. So I think that the school accountability committees are the place for the community and the parents to go first to get the information. And then we really need to bring it down to the questions they have, and not inundate them with too much data of what percentage of the state budget goes towards K-12 and what percentage goes to higher ed, and detail that it's really not going to answer their questions or make them feel more comfortable. So I believe that Jeffco is very transparent, and all the information is there for them, for anybody, but it's too much. And the more we can bring it down to the school level and address particular questions, I think the more successful we'll be dealing with the community. Thank you.
Kathy?
Jeffco is going to spend $1.4 billion this year, and spending has increased the last 5 years, 33%. It's significantly outpaced inflation. We need to have thoughtful engagement with our community. We have state dollars, federal dollars, and local dollars. We then need to discuss our needs with central supports and for school-based budgeting. How does this spending align with our goals and objectives? We need to support our children and also ensure that we retain our teachers and our leaders. The purpose of the board is to govern. That's what we need to do.
Jeff?
I'm going to go a little bit different direction on this, because 70% of our Jeffco population does not have a kid in the school. They're not connected, and all they hear is that on occasion they'll hear the size of the school budget, and $1.4 billion is a lot. So I would also like not only to focus on the inside group of people who have kids in the school, but I think that we really need to start looking outside of that group and make a good, clean justification and understanding for the rest of the folks in the county, because it's their property taxes too. And so I would hope that we just kind of step back a little bit and look larger at what the word community means. Thanks.
Danielle?
I really like this question because when I was active in the recalls 6 years ago, and when that was all over, I got super curious about what was happening in schools, and how budgets were being decided was one of those things. And so I went and I joined the SAC committee, which I didn't really know much about, for this very reason, because I was curious and confused, and I didn't really know. And so here's what I learned by being a parent on the SAC committee, that this is an engaged process. Parents and staff are participating in the budget process. And I found that it was a really great way for us to learn about the budget while we were doing it. But it also gave me confidence in the transparency of what was happening. I also started learning more about what the budget, what the district offered in terms of what was happening on the website. I could download things. You know, transparency is built into public budgets. I think people who are talking about the lack of transparency might not understand public budgets entirely. What we really need to focus on is what's been mentioned here, are the way budgets are prioritized. And what I also learned as a parent on the SAC is that priorities happen at the school level. It is our principals making decisions with the limited budgets that they have based on our student-based budgeting programs. And that's how we get full-time amps at one school and an assistant principal at another, and other resources, and why our neighborhood schools across the street don't have the same resources. And I think, you know, what we can do is make this process that I had the privilege to be a part of more transparent to the community, even as Jeff mentioned there, by helping parents like me who cannot go to SAC committees understand budgets in that same way.
Time.
We're going to go to question number 2. And I'll tell you the question and then I'll give you the order. Do you believe education in Colorado has the funding it needs? And it'll be Kathy, Mary, Danielle, Jeff, Teresa, Dave, and Paula. Kathy?
Thank you. I think that's an excellent question. As I said in the last response, we've got a $1.4 billion budget for Jeffco. From 2016 to 2020, spending increased 33% versus nearly a 10% inflation rate. During this same time, enrollment decreased 7%, but the number of employees in administrative services category has grown over 20%. If this variance was accompanied by higher performance, we could celebrate. However, this is not the case, as we saw in the earlier slides. I have the business experience necessary to uncover spending leakage, right-size administrative spending, focus money in the classroom, and invest in programs that increase opportunities for students. I believe that we have the money there. We just need to make sure that it's allocated so that it goes back to the classroom where it can help the students the most. Thank you.
Mary?
The answer to this is a resounding no. We do not have the adequate funding. And that's because of the constraints on the state as a whole. We have Tabor, and Tabor not only requires that citizens, voters, be engaged and vote on any tax increases, but it also limits the amount of money that the state is able to keep from its revenue. And there is a formula in there that takes into account population increase and inflation. And so when economic times vary, Tabor can come in and do some real harm. Anytime we have a downturn in the economy, then our revenue goes down. And then if we are fortunate enough to come back with our revenue, Tabor says, oh no, not so fast. You can only come back in little tiny pieces. So when you hear that we have a $1.4 billion budget and it's 30% over what it was in 2016, you have to go back before 2016 and you have to figure out how much did the budget suffer before then? How much did Tabor cause us to lose from the state funding? I'm sure you'll hear often the talk about the negative factor, and that's when we have conflicts from our state requirements from Tabor that we cannot keep as much revenue as we take in, and then other statutory requirements that we must fund education at a certain level. Well, those things run into each other and make it impossible to balance the state budget. So the state legislature came up with what they called first a negative factor, and now it's the BS factor, budget stabilization. But the result is, if you go to the state legislature, you will see they are constantly trying to figure out how can we find money for our state. We are not funding education adequately.
Danielle?
I agree entirely. No, there is not enough funding for education. I will always advocate that we need to better fund our schools, our teachers. And I don't think I'll ever give up on that. It's obviously not enough, but we do the best we can. I know that our resources are finite and we have to figure out how we can allocate them by both leveraging resources in different ways, but also, where can we cut costs? As a business owner, it's my number one priority to figure out how to cut overhead and put money into programs and people. And I wonder how we can do that better in our schools. I know that the student-based budgeting model was put in place to level out some of our inequities in schools, except, however, what it's doing is when a school is facing lower attendance, we see a funding loss that's just perpetuating a cycle of reduced resources over time. I think this is a really difficult issue from the top down. We need to think about ways that we can use things like the ESSER dollars coming in really creative ways so that we can make good investments, wise investments, have good returns with that. But that's a one-time opportunity. If we can take better looks at how we can better support our faculty and our staff and teachers, I think that we can take a better look at these resources until the time comes when we can see more money coming into public education.
Jeff?
Mary did an outstanding job of explaining the complexities of how our state government works in terms of funding. Outstanding, but we're always at the bottom 10%, of states, which is a sad thing. This gives us an opportunity, as I think Superintendent Dorland's engaged in, is looking at how we spend our money right now. $1.4 billion is a lot of money. And, yes, we in theory could use more, but in practice, since we only get incremental increases to our funds, we probably need to go back and really do a deep dive and figure out if we're accurately and adequately spending the funds that we get. Thanks.
Teresa?
Thank you. We live in a really interesting state. Our state has grown significantly over the last 5 to 10 years. And the population in sort of our 20 to 30 plus is just booming. I mean, it's growing exponentially. And what that really means is that a lot of people are coming here and they're going to bring they have families and they're going to want to educate their kids. But then we have voters that then want state taxes reduced. So it's kind of this really conflicting thing that's happening, where people don't want high taxes, but then they want higher education. So the way I would approach something like this is this way I've always approached anything in business. When your resources are finite, you have to manage with what you have. And that is the most important time to do what we're trying to do right now, it sounds like, which is take a really, really hard look at where our funds are going. And are they being invested in those programs and in those areas? They're going to really help drive what our ultimate mission is. And that is academic achievement with our students, preparing them for life after high school. Thanks.
David?
Obviously, we do not have the appropriate funding as far as education funding. I will say that education is the #2 line item in the state budget behind healthcare. And so if we are going to have a conversation around if it's appropriate funding, it's not like we can ask the state to give us more money because they don't have any money. And I do believe it's part of the job of the board of directors to advocate with other districts at the state level and with the governor to ensure that this school funding formula is addressed properly. It was already touched on very well, that we have a situation that the school funding formula in this state is not the same as other states, and that hampers us dramatically. And correct, the budget stabilization factor, every budget meeting we ever had, it's a staggering amount of money, and it's just plain a clawback based on the state government being able to say they fund education, they cannot balance the budget, and then they take money back so they can not violate our state constitution. It's borderline illegal. And I said that to Dr. Glass, and I said that to the governor when I met with them, that it is totally inappropriate and it needs to be addressed. And I believe that the board of directors should work with other districts to work on the top line funding formula. Obviously, we have to look at every dollar we spend very appropriately, go line by line to ensure that every dollar we get is spent appropriately. But we have a top line problem, and it needs to be addressed with the state, and we need to work with other districts to ensure school funding formulas are addressed and fixed if this state will ever change.
Paula?
Well, you're going to sense a theme here because the fact of the matter is, no, we are not funded to the level that we need to be. We talk about wanting to be up there with other counties our size or other districts our size nationally, and Colorado spends $3,000 less per child than the national average. And there's a lot of loss in that $3,000 per child. So I think that school boards have flat out a moral obligation to lean hard on our state leaders to fund schools at the level that they are supposed to fund them. And you know what? If you don't have the money for that, then it's time to go to your constituents and speak the hard truth, which is that Tabor is not working and that what we are doing to our students and our schools is an absolute disgrace. This has to be done in no uncertain terms. We need to undo Tabor. And as a school board, we don't have the power to make that happen, but we do have the power to put pressure in the right places and to speak that truth to people that are going to have a tough time hearing it, but it's got to happen. So that is a really big piece of it. In the meantime, as I said, I feel like every decision that we make needs to look ultimately at what is going to happen to the classroom when we make that decision. So when it comes to the cuts that we make, if things at the Ed Center are not directly beneficial to classrooms, then honestly, they're going to be the first on the chopping block. We've got to take care of our classrooms first. And we do have to take care of the wages that we pay. Right now, we have kids that aren't getting lunch because we don't have enough cafeteria workers to get our kids through those lines fast enough, or the schools run out of food because they don't have enough workers to be making meals for all of them. We're running out of bus drivers. These are fundamental things that we need to take care of immediately.
Time.
All right, we're going to go to question number 3, and I'm going to read the question and then I'll give you the order. There has been a strong shift in favor of privatizing public education. The tools being promoted in this effort include vouchers, ESAs or educational savings accounts, tax credits, and choice scholarships. Tell us what school choice means to you. And we'll start with Jeff, followed by Danielle, David, Paula, Teresa, Mary, and Kathy.
I don't think school choice has anything to do with privatization of the schools. I think that, we're looking to get on a board that's a public entity, and public schools have been here for a long time, and when they're good, they're good. And so what we're trying to do is just make this school district good again. I don't support any of that stuff. School choice to me means maybe you move, your kids into a charter school if that makes sense for them. Maybe they move from one neighborhood school to another school, but it doesn't mean giving people money to go outside the district to a private school. Thanks.
Danielle?
I think like most parents, I value choice and how we raise our kids. And I think that Jeffco's done a really great job in providing choice to parents throughout the district by providing lots of different types of schools. And I have friends that go to neighborhood schools, but also charter schools, option schools, but also private schools and homeschooling. And I think how we educate our kids is a really personal matter. I believe that choice can be viewed as a personal option and should be for each family. And yet when you ask the question, what does choice mean to me? I tend to see it a little bit more from a community lens. And I think more importantly, an equity lens. And I think we know that choice doesn't mean the same thing for everyone. And there's a lot of families whose only choice is to go to a neighborhood school. I'm actually one of those parents. I'm a single mom with jobs. I work, I have to get my kids to school really early and close by so that I can be at my desk every day to work. And yet I'm a well-resourced white woman with privilege. And I have friends whose kids are dreamers. And when I talk to them about their choices and their ways of getting their kids to school and where they think they can go to school, it's their closest schools. And I just think that it's absolutely critical that we ensure that all families have the choice of sending their kids to the best school that they can, whether that be an option school, a charter school, or a neighborhood school. And I just want to make sure that we're giving resources to all of those options in strong ways so that parents have all of that choice when they are trying to think of where to send their kids to school. Thanks.
David?
I do not support privatization of education through the form of vouchers, ESAs, or tax credits. I do support choice education, and I'm the product of choice education. When I moved to Colorado, I chose the school where we wanted to send our daughter, but we could not find a home to purchase there. And so we had to choice into that school for 2 consecutive years until I purchased a home to live in the area where I wanted to be. And as expressed, I had that right to do that because I had the means to do that. But as an answer to the question, privatization of public education is not the answer. Supporting underperforming schools where those students do not feel, or those families and those parents do not feel they are not getting an equal and high-performing school and education to where they feel they want to choice out and go somewhere else should be our emphasis as a board and as a district. Supporting those schools, those teachers, and those parents to make and give them the opportunity to succeed is where we should spend our dollars. And ensuring that those families have the opportunity, whether it be through a community school, a charter school, or some of the options within our district and our public school district, needs to be the option of choice, not privatization.
Paula?
I'm entirely opposed to privatization. I'm not at all interested in taking any of the meager dollars that we have for our students and sending those off to private schools or scholarships or anything along those lines. I certainly think that we need to support all of the schools that we currently have. No two ways about that, whether that's an option school or a charter school or a neighborhood school. These are all communities that parents and kids count on, and they need to be well supported. When it comes to my own focus for choice, I really like to see there to be options within neighborhood schools so that for the kids who can't go to other schools, they even have some flexibility in their neighborhood school. For example, the variety of programs that I taught in at Columbine, great choices for kids. For us, my kids went to Hutchinson Elementary School, and while my son was there, he was able to participate for 2 years in a multi-age classroom, and that ended up being a really good option for him. So I think that we can offer different kinds of things for different kinds of kids within our neighborhood schools. The thing that is really important to me is we've talked repeatedly about how limited our resources are. We don't want to spread those too thin. We don't want to end up with an education system that is a mile wide and an inch deep. Let's make sure all of our schools are fully supported. Thank you.
Teresa?
I'm going to echo something that Danielle said. Jeffco really has some great options, and choice here in Colorado right now to all of us means that we can take advantage of those options. We can take advantage of our neighborhood schools, which I have done. We can take advantage of an option school, which I have experience with. We can take advantage of charters. There are a lot of options for a lot of different children with a lot of different learning abilities within our district. And that is fantastic. And we as a state should celebrate that. Privatization is going to be something decided by the voters. It's not going to be something that the board's going to get to decide, or the district for that matter. So the big thing I think that we need to be focused on, and what we should keep top of mind, is what can we as a board do to make our schools the best that they can be, and people won't choice out of them. Right now, we have 45% of our students choice into something other than their neighborhood school. So they do view all these options we provide as fantastic choices. And that's a great thing. But to the extent that we can put some of our efforts into this hard work that Superintendent Dorland talked about, and make Jeffco one of the most premier school districts in the country, it doesn't really matter what the voters decide. If people want to attend their school and it's their neighborhood school and it's the best school they can attend, they'll do that. Thank you.
Mary?
I grew up in Montgomery County, Maryland. And back there, the choice you had as to what school you went to was where you lived. And if you wanted to go to a different school, you had to move. When I came out to Colorado 16 years ago and saw all the choices that my grandkids have, I was amazed. Jefferson County has 155 schools, and it's got 17 option schools, or 12 option schools, and 15 charter schools. It's even got an online school. So I was blown away with the ability of people to stay where they're living, but choose where they want to go to school. And it doesn't even have to be in your own county. So I think Jeffco has a lot to be proud of with all the choices that they have. And as has been said before, and as I indicated with my CASA work, sometimes kids and families don't have the ability, or they're unwilling to put in the time to find the best school or research alternatives. So it's very critical that we have high quality neighborhood schools for those kids. Thank you.
Kathy?
In my family, my 3 children had very different learning needs. They attended our neighborhood elementary and middle schools, but when it came to high school, one of our children decided to attend an out of neighborhood school, which ended up being a really good opportunity for her. And I think every parent and every child should have those same opportunities to decide what's best for them. Jeffco is very fortunate that we have several school options for students. In addition to over 100 neighborhood schools, which serve both neighborhood students and those that choice in, Jeffco also has option and charter schools. And all of these are public schools that are ultimately accountable to the Jeffco Board of Education. We need to have a school board that honors different students' needs and supports all Jeffco students, whether they're governed by parents and staff or by the Jeffco School Board. Now more than ever, it's important to support public education choices parents are making. I'm grateful for the decisions that we were able to make, that they were best for our children, and all parents should be able to choose what's best for their kids. I support parents' ability to make the best choices for their students.
Thank you, and we'll move to question number 4. Not every student comes to school with the same background and resources. What strategies would you employ as a board member in partnering with the district and community to ensure equity so all students have the opportunity to reach their full potential? We will start with Paula, followed by Teresa, David, Kathy, Mary, Danielle, and Jeff. Paula?
In my ACE class one year, I had a 9th grade boy who, like a lot of kids, his parents were divorced and they shared custody. But unlike a lot of kids, that meant that he slept in mom's car one night and dad's car another night. Now, the school provided him with a free lunch and they provided him with a laptop with a Chromebook, but he lived in cars, so he didn't have anywhere to plug his Chromebook in. So he came to school with it completely out of power every morning and had to come in early and plug it in my classroom. So it's true, not all kids come with the same resources. And we do get at-risk funds for kids, but that is often not enough. And earlier, someone had mentioned, I think it might have been Danielle, about student-based budgeting and how that was supposed to make everything equitable, and it really hasn't. Because some kids have more needs than others, and some schools have more kids with more needs than others. So this is where I think we bring in Tracy Dorland's concept of that just right balance, of really looking at how can the district best make use of the resources that it has to make sure that kids have access to everything that they need, while still providing funds to schools that are discretionary, because different schools have different needs, and you do want to make sure that principals have discretionary funds to spend in ways that make the most sense for their students. So I really think that a big piece of that is looking at how is the district using its resources? Are there ways that we can do things at the district level more efficiently or less expensively to take care of the kids who have those higher needs? Thank you.
Teresa?
I live this, and this is not a surprise. The district does not do this right now. For 2 years, after I was PTSA treasurer and then moved on to SAC, we did that very thing. We tried to fight for targeted interventions and resources from the district to help our school because we were different. We were not a title school, but we happened to have 400 plus students in elementary school. And we had an at-risk population over 40%. Title is 60 or 65. 40% of an at-risk population in a school with 400 plus elementary school children, that's a lot of children. That's a lot of children in desperate need of a lot of resources. And for 2 years, through the District Accountability Committee, through the Community Superintendent, through the Regional Superintendent, we tried. Our school tried, and we didn't get anywhere. So yes, I absolutely agree with Superintendent Dorland that this is something that we should look at, because our school is not an anomaly. There are several schools out there like that, where I do believe we need to be more thoughtful about how we target resources in places where they are needed the most. The last thing you want to do is get to a place where other schools feel like they're not getting their attention as well. And that's what I think the SBB student-based budgeting model was an attempt to do, with some adjustments here and there to make things a little equal across the board. And I think that that is still not a terrible idea, but we have to look at what our primary goal is, and that is preparing our students for life after high school. And if it takes more resources in certain places to get there, we absolutely need to look into that. Thanks.
David?
Just trying to remember the question. I think that really what I took out of the question was that not every student His background is equal and understanding. So what comes to mind is just my diversity from my background. I started my career at an inner city Chicago high school that was 99% African American, and you had to drive through razor wire to go into the parking lot. Then I moved here to Colorado, and I worked at a private school up in Vail, and Lindsey Vaughn was there. It was like 50,000 cash to go, and there were 47 private students. And then I went to New Mexico, and I worked with students there who was 99% poverty. Some of the people didn't even have running water. And then I moved down to Scottsdale, and I had some students there where we're driving Porsches to school, and the average income was, $1 gazillion. And so all I sat here thinking about was, I think I've had an opportunity to work in a very diverse set of schools, from Chicago to Phoenix to Denver to Vail to Scottsdale. And I think I have a really solid understanding of what it's like to come to school hungry, and what it's like to come to school driving a Porsche. And how I would work with the district is draw from that experience and really look at all the different opportunities that those things have. And that's Jefferson County. I said that in a forum before. Jefferson County is the most diverse county I've ever seen. We have all of that right here. As I see up in Evergreen, and I drive right down to Lakewood, right here in District 2, we have it all here. So I would just draw from my own personal career and my experience in my life to work with the district to maximize that student's experience to get the best education we can provide for those students.
Kathy?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. As I said in my opening, when I travel all over the country, I see so much poverty, homelessness, hopelessness. And I think that's because in those areas, the public education system is failing. We're not putting the resources in to break the cycle of poverty. So I have seen firsthand what happens on a large scale when we are not providing the resources. When our kids were in middle school, we worked with a group of moms and the sons to start this 3v3 charity basketball tournament to raise funds that were used to provide for the Jeffco Schools Foundation so that they could do extra activities for kids that had less. And that was very satisfying because not only were we doing it as parents, we were teaching the next generation of kids to volunteer and really contribute and give back to help those that are less fortunate. I agree with the student-based budgeting that gives the principals the autonomy to put the funds where it's most needed in their communities. And then I also think that that type of budgeting is necessary to break the cycle and make sure we're giving kids all of the opportunities that they need to be successful after high school. Thank you.
Mary?
The kids that I work with CASA obviously are coming from different backgrounds and a lot of lack in resources. And what we try to do with all of those cases is reunite the family. So that's the number one goal. And if the family doesn't have a job, doesn't have a home, has a drug abuse problem, we try to get them the treatment and the help that they need for that. And one thing that's really helpful, I think, that we can work with the community is to get more schools with daycare facilities in them so that these parents can not only send their kids to school, but they can also have after school and before school care for them. Another thing that I know from one of my daughter's experiences when she taught in a school that had a community that was English as a second language. And it was really difficult to get those parents involved and come in for parent-teacher conferences or back to school nights. And they discovered that if they could add some additional community service for those families to come in, they would do it. And in one school, believe it or not, they actually had washing machines and dryers, and families could bring their laundry in and have the laundry going while they were having their meetings. So anyway, I think that we can think for ways to support the families as a whole, and that will benefit the students as well. Thank you.
Danielle?
Yeah, I think it's absolutely critical that we provide resources in equitable ways across the district. I agree with others that Superintendent Dorland's plan to think about how the district can supplement some of these gaps by providing district level resources to distribute more equally to schools so that they don't have to provide them at each school level is one strategy, because we know that the school-based budgeting program or model is not working to address those gaps. However, I think we can do more. The zip code that a person is born in determines 80% of their health and mental health outcomes. We know that from research. We're still doing that research in terms of school outcomes, but we can be sure that it's really similar. And we know that because we know that's the social and economic factors that families face impact their outcomes. So when families don't have access to food or adequate housing, they can't come to school ready to learn. And one innovation that I support that's been really developing over the last few years is the community school model. It's a place-based strategy in which schools partner with community agencies and allocate resources to provide integrated focus on academics, health, social services, youth and community development, and community engagement. So this is a way that the community can get involved and we can leverage resources for teaching and learning in the schools, but also resources for better health and mental health, dental services, food options, developmental services, and things like that. And what we know is that in communities where these needs are greatest and these inequities most exist, those are the schools where we need to bring these kinds of partnerships in to help supplement and make the school the hub of the community. On the Western Slope, they're doing this really well in partnership with their public health department. And they are a great model locally in the state of how we can actually address some of these inequities.
Jeff.
So I'm looking at this a little bit higher up. And I think I would probably, as a board member, go to the superintendent and say, you know, can you come back and tell me how deep this problem really is? And because I think we're guessing a little bit, you know, and that's fine, but I don't want to guess. And then once you have a true idea, and maybe you never get a true idea of it, then you have to do a reallocation of the funds that we have, and we go back to that, you know, same situation that we seem to fall, you know, into when we only have so much money. But I think as much money as we can possibly put towards this problem, we should do. But we need to know what exactly is going on so that we can do exactly what's necessary to fix it. Thanks.
Great. Appreciate all of you so far. Great answers. Question number 5. The state of Colorado has the required ICAP program, and Jeffco has some amazing career and technical education programs. What other opportunities would you like to see in Jeffco for students and families to explore post-graduation pathways, and what would you change to engage families in this work? And we will start with Teresa, followed by David, Paula, Mary, Kathy, Jeff, Danielle. Teresa?
Thank you. This is a good question. And this is one that I have just started really digging into and trying to learn a lot more about. I grew up in a family, as I mentioned before, with 12 siblings. And growing up on a farm, not everybody was going to go to college. That just wasn't going to happen. That's my parents, I think, did their best to try to make that happen, but that just wasn't going to happen. But what we had in our public schools that every single one of my 7 brothers did was auto shop. They had wood shop. They had all sorts, they had, if you wanted to go do apprentice for plumbing, they had all sorts of programs in the high school. You didn't have to drive somewhere. They were integrated into our high school where they were able to look at opportunities for things to do post-high school that didn't involve going to college. So yeah, I absolutely think this is something that we can do more. I'm very excited about what's happening on the Warren Tech side of things. And my understanding is this is something that we are trying to drill down a little bit more to see if there are ways to incorporate more of those types of programs in our local high schools instead of them having to be somewhere else. I guess the combination of both would be something that would be great for all those children that are going to choose to do something after high school that isn't necessarily going on to college.
David?
I think the district does a wonderful job of providing additional career education and technical education planning within the high schools already. I think the district has a great staff behind it. As DAC interacted with them on a monthly basis, they would come and present to us the programs they were working on, and I was always very impressed by that. The fact that, post 90s, No Child Left Behind stripped all the public education of vocational education and funneled all the funds into testing and basic education for math and reading and science because everyone felt we were falling behind was a travesty. And what we're seeing right now is a tremendous push to provide those services back to education. The role of public education in high school in particular, is to provide career planning for students. And whether that be a college track or whether that be a profession, it needs to be able to provide both, not just one. And the resources that we provide as a district need to be equal in that, or as equal as we can. As it's been expressed, it's a tremendous resource that we should be able to provide at all our community schools. My daughter just said to me, I have to drive down to, attend this class because it was specific to a class that she wants to go to. It's disappointing that we have to do that and it's not provided at our local school. So I would work with the district to ensure that maybe those opportunities were in every school that's already been touched on. But it's integral for public education to provide career planning and vocational education.
Paula?
I think we're improving in this. Obviously, the fact that we have expanded Warren TAC has shown that we're finally figuring this out. I was very dismayed over the course of my career to see us cut a lot of the technical arts classes and that sort of thing in favor of testing. And honestly, I think to discourage students that sometimes didn't test well, to get them to not go to particular schools. I think there were some really terrible things going on, honestly, around that. And so I think we need to go back to lifting this up as a great thing, that going into technical fields is a really great option to go with. So when I taught ACE, I had a giant bulletin board in my room that had a lot of different skilled trades and jobs that required certifications, and gave their starting salaries and their average salaries so that kids could see that these really were viable options for really good careers. And then, we do a lot to lift up the kids that get accepted to college and get college scholarships and that kind of thing. They're recognized in school newsletters and award ceremonies and at graduations and that kind of thing. And I think that we can acknowledge this for our kiddos who are going into other kinds of careers. If we have a student who's actually graduating career ready because they've gotten certifications and done concurrent classes, we can honor that and say, hey, these are our kids who are ready to step into the professional world right now, and see them as role models and people that we should admire. We talk about kids who are joining the military, going into colleges. What about kids that are joining a trade union and are getting ready for a terrific career that way? So I think we can do a lot to lift this up and make kids into each other's role models. Thank you.
Mary?
I recently had the opportunity to go attend the ribbon cutting for Warren Tech, the South Campus. It was so exciting. We were waiting a long time for that. And I went to the different classrooms, and the students were explaining what they were learning there. And I have never seen more enthusiastic kids in my life. There was physical therapy classroom. There were audio visual classes. There was hospitality. And of course, the premier one was the flight simulator they had for their aviation classes. I had kids show me their drones, talk about their obstacle courses they did with them. So that was really exciting. Also, on a personal note, two of my daughters were able to take a medical careers class in high school, and they partnered with a local hospital. One of my daughters fainted on the first day, so she knew medical careers was not it for her. But the other one is now working at Children's Hospital. She was able to get into a really good physical therapy program because of this extracurricular or extra career-oriented class that she got to take. So I think it's wonderful. What I would like to do is see some more apprenticeships available. Getting a head start, and as Paula said, getting some credentials there while you're in high school. And for my company that we have in our compensation and recruiting areas, we give talks to college kids and talk to them about the starting salaries in different careers. And I'd like to see that brought down to the high school level as well. Thank you.
Kathy?
Yeah, I think this is a great question. Jeffco has done a really good job so far with all of our additional training, and super excited about the new Warren Tech South facility. I think what I would like to see additionally is Jeffco working with employers to make sure that we are offering programs that employers have a need for and value those certifications. I think it's critical. There are huge underfilled jobs in the market right now that we can't. In my business, we can't hire people because there aren't qualified folks out there. So what I would like to see is Jeffco work side by side with businesses in the area to get input and develop programs so that we can get kids ready for jobs that are going to be available in the 21st century. The other thing that I would like to see is more STEM development. I know when I started at Mines, it was a 1-to-5 ratio of women to men. So I was definitely in the minority there. And then when I was working with the space shuttle program, I was always the only woman in the room. So I would like to see us developing programs where we're encouraging women and minorities to get into STEM areas. We also started an Expanding Your Horizons conference to encourage women while they're at a pivotal time of deciding what to do with their lives, give them role models for women that were in professional science, math-related fields. So I'd like to see Jeffco a little bit more involved with that. And then finally, we know that there's a need for teachers, especially in minority demographics. So I would like to see a program where we're encouraging kids to go into teaching. Maybe that's something that we can help ourselves with. Thank you.
Jeff?
I want to second what Kathy said in terms of working with employers, not just in Jeffco, but just in the state to figure out what's necessary. I don't think that we're providing anywhere near enough, employees to industry. And I love Warren Tech. I've always enjoyed Warren Tech, but I think not everybody gets in Warren Tech. And so I think that it's important to broaden out what we're giving our kids as options to learn. And boy, apprentices and internships are great ways for kids to really find out if they want to do a particular job, and it also helps the company. So we can do a lot more. DPS has a great program called Career Connect, and we should just go visit that, look at that too. Thanks.
Danielle?
My mother was a math teacher, and my father was an immigrant from Europe who tells stories all the time about working as a trade engineer and, working his way up to management. And I myself have had a pretty unusual pathway career-wise. As a young person, I never imagined I would do these jobs and roles that I have now. I'm the first in my family to get a doctorate. When I started my own company, there were so many people who told me you could never be a CEO. And I think as a woman, as a mom, this is just something that we hear. But I was lucky enough to have amazing mentors, advisors, and I was exposed to all these different opportunities. My current business coach believes it's his #1 job to increase my confidence. That's what he says. And our kids need these same kinds of mentors, these same kinds of supports and pathways to these kinds of opportunities. So I think we can do that in a few ways. First, we need to show kids the different opportunities. We need to be especially thoughtful about kids of color and non-native English speakers and showing them opportunities that they may not see themselves in to build their confidence and awareness of those pathways. And second, we need to build out systems and resources that can expose kids to opportunities for skill development across different industries. And third, I think we need to be partnering with different professional and organizations and industries for these internship and apprenticeship opportunities. I participated last year in our More Middle School career days, where we came and got to present to kids about the jobs that we do. And it was so fun. My kids came home and talked about how fun it was to learn these things. Kids are natural entrepreneurs. They're curious, they like to experiment, they're willing to learn and try again. And I'd love to ensure that we're bringing that kind of thinking into their learning, which I believe will bring them to that next level of skill development that employers are looking for.
We're going to go to question number 6. The number one polling topic of concern to parents is school safety. Several questions were submitted on this subject, and they were all the same. Here's the question. Do you support arming teachers and/or other school staff? And we will start with David Johnson, followed by Paula, Teresa, Danielle, Jeff, Kathy, Mary.
Come on, I got to go first on that one. That's a tough one. That's a tough question. That is a great question, though. I mean, I think that what I have had the experience in my personal opinion is that school support officers are a great deterrent to school violence, and trained professionals in the building are the only people that should be allowed to have any opportunity to be armed, and that's it. I do not support teachers being armed. I do not support additional services. Having worked in the city of Chicago, like I referred to, where we had armed personnel in the building and we walked through metal detectors every day, and we had to go in and out through lunch through metal detectors. I remember that very clearly as a young 20-something student. I know that there are situations here that there are school shootings and very tragic situations that a lot of people have strong opinions about arming students or staff. But what I see and what I believe is that the school resource professionals can be the deterrent and are the trained professionals to do that. And that's where I stand on that.
Paula?
So this is a topic that is near and dear to me, having taught at Columbine for 30 years. So obviously having been through a school shooting. And I do believe that SROs should be armed. I don't have a problem with that. I do think that they are the only ones who should be armed. They go through intensive training, and they have more expertise in that than the rest of us. I certainly don't want to go to the Denver model where we basically arm campus supervisors. I don't think that's a good idea. And as a teacher, you know, I just retired 3 years ago. So I am a 5'2" middle-aged woman. And the only way a gun is going to do me any good is if it's actually on my person at all times. So imagine an impulsive 17-year-old getting really angry and knowing that his tiny little teacher has a gun, that if he can just access it before I can, now he's armed. So I think that giving me a gun would have been dangerous. And I've had teachers say to me, well, if you're not comfortable carrying a gun, then don't carry one. Well, if I'm comfortable carrying one, I'm still a 5'2" middle-aged woman who apparently now has bad judgment and a sidearm. I don't think that's a good idea. And the other thing I have to tell you is that I taught Dylan Klebold, and I loved all of my students, including him. So asking me to love my students and kill my students is asking too much. Thank you.
Teresa?
Jeffco unfortunately has this legacy of what happened at Columbine. And yes, we are all so sorry about what happened. I know all of us know people who know people who know people. Those kinds of things shake whole communities. And it is true at this point that we do have armed resource officers in our schools. I met ours at the middle school when I went for orientation. I was happy to see that person because all of us want our children to feel safe in school. All of us, my children, your grandchildren, we all want that. And I think our armed resource officers actually are there and do a good job of keeping their pulse on what's happening. And I do think, I agree with Dave, they will deter as much as they may unfortunately have to respond to something. But the deterrent is probably a very good idea. So should every person who has a concealed carry permit be able to walk on a school campus? Is that a great idea? So here's what I think we need to really think about. That probably is not a great idea. But if I am elected to the board, we have to remember one thing about our community. It is very geographically diverse. And if the community sees a need and the administrators in the building see a need and our experts, our safety and security expert that we have in Jeffco, one of the top in the nation, if those people see a need for additional security of some form in a school, it is our job to listen to those people. It is our job to listen, to be respectful to what they're asking and why, and to understand. That is a side of a pendulum that is not the same as let's let everybody walk into a school with a gun. Thanks.
Danielle?
Well, I think I will start by saying I totally disagree with Teresa that this is a option that our teachers and staff should be armed in schools. I just fundamentally don't agree with that. However, I know school safety is a top priority for all of us, and we want our best measures in place while communicating to our families and kids that they are safe. And I appreciate our partnerships with our community safety and public safety officers and our SROs in the school. I agree with Dave that only those trained to be armed should ever be. I can't add much more than what has been said that I think is really profound in terms of explaining some of that. But I will take this moment then just to kind of advocate that, when we think about this issue, we need to think a lot further beyond how to lock our doors and do great safety drills, but also how are we addressing the root causes of violence in schools. I think we can think about that from the perspective and lens of the mental health and wellness of our kids and our families and our teachers. And I think that that has to be a part of this conversation, and that we need to be thinking about different ways to bring conflict resolution into schools to help kids understand how to communicate and reach out and stay connected when they need that help. So the answer to my question is no, I do not support arming teachers and other support staff. Yeah, thank you.
Jeff?
Sadly, we will never not be the home of Columbine. We just won't. And that will all this district in perpetuity. But we are also the home of a guy named John McDonald, who's the safety and security officer for the district, who's a nationally known expert. We're the home of the DeAngelis Center. And we have some wonderful resources and people that are much wiser than all of us in this room in terms of how things should be conducted in schools. And so I want to, I guess, thank that John McDonald is part of our district. And as a board member, that's a voice that I would listen to very strongly. Thanks.
Kathy?
Our community has suffered a lot due to gun violence with both Columbine and Deer Creek. My I had family at Columbine when it happened. I've got a family member that lives across the street. Their house was part of the crime scene. So I know exactly how that feels to go through that. I also coached volleyball at Columbine High School for 10 years under Frank DeAngelis. And we're very fortunate that the Frank DeAngelis Training Center was built and is being used to train our officers and resource officers for that. So I think that only police officers and safety resource officers that have been through the training center should be armed in our school and maintain their skills through that center. Thank you.
Mary?
This question is so important to me and I want to do it justice. I'm a member of Moms Demand Action. I joined in 2018 after the Marjorie Stoneman Douglas shooting. A friend and I started the Columbine group of Moms Demand Action, and our first meeting was scheduled for May 7th, 2019. Kelly texted me early that morning about how excited she was to see how many people would come. And a few hours later, she texted me that she was on her way to her kids' school because her 2 kids attended STEM. Colorado has a very unfortunate reputation for school shootings. Something I want to emphasize is that I am a gun owner. I have a concealed carry permit, which by the way, requires absolutely no hands-on experience at all. And I've taken many training classes, including the psychology of carrying a gun. I used laser guns in simulated situations where they displayed a scene on the screen, and we stood there with our gun drawn, our finger on the trigger, and we had to determine who was the bad guy and when and if we should shoot. The results of that exercise were abysmal. The vast majority of teachers do not want to carry guns. My daughters do not want to carry guns. In fact, they don't want to work in a school where the staff members carry guns. This is one of the worst ideas ever. Thank you.
We're going to go to the last question, question number 7. How should Jeffco ensure we attract and retain great education staff in Jeffco? And do you support pay for performance for teachers? And we're going to start with Paula, followed by Teresa, David, Mary, Kathy, Danielle, and Jeff. Paula?
Well, I think there's no question that, pay is a piece of this, and we want to pay competitively, very competitively, because that is how you attract and retain your best talent. You want teaching in general to be the sort of profession that people want to go into, because what's happening right now is young people are looking at it and saying, but when I graduate, I can't pay my student loans. So why would I go into this? For a long time, I think people have said, well, teachers, you knew you weren't going to get paid much for doing this. So, if you wanted more money, you should have gone into something else. And our young people are going, you know what, you're right. I think I'll go into something else. And if they are going into education, they're going to better paying districts, or they start with us and they learn with us and they get great. And then they go to other districts. So we have to make sure that we have highly competitive wages. In terms of pay for performance, I saw what that did under Whit, Newkirk, and Williams. And what it did is it made teachers angry and resentful of each other. And they wanted to know why this person got highly effective and that person didn't. And what is this person doing that I'm not? And that was so different from how it had been before, where it was really just like, wow, this person's really good at this. I'm going to go and ask them for ideas. And we shared ideas, and you weren't competing against each other. So it was like, hey, I did this great thing and the kids loved it. And here, I'm going to give it to everybody else to try. Because like with everything else, resources are limited. And so as soon as you start tying pay to performance, you're going to get the same thing that happened under Whit, Newkirk, and Williams. Principals were told, don't give very many high ratings. And the drive was to save money, not to accurately, evaluate teachers. I think it was a disaster then, and it would be a disaster to do it again now.
Teresa?
So the first part of the question, attract and retain. Every organization has this battle. I've been in business for 35 years. I've had that battle for 35 years. Every organization has to figure out how to attract and retain the most qualified individuals. Jeffco is no different. And so I guess what we know right now is that we have teaching positions that get posted. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, do we have sufficient numbers of candidates apply, or do we have no candidates apply? I believe that we have sufficient number of candidates apply in certain positions. I believe in other positions like our paras or our bus drivers or our food service workers, we don't. And so that is an important thing that we need to look at. It is not, again, as someone has said before, it is not a one size fits all solution. So where are we not attracting qualified candidates? And then what happens is, who do we not retain? Do we have people leave for higher jobs in other districts? Do they leave to quit teaching? Do they move away? This is just data that needs to be analyzed. And once you look at the data and analyze it, you can make a more meaningful decision on what you need to change in order to make sure you are always attracting and retaining your best. The second part of the question is pay for performance. I know it's a controversial topic, but I also, just so there's a piece about me that in business, it's standard. And what it does in an organization is, if you're someone like me and you're working in an all man's world, you are rewarded for your work. And you're rewarded for your contributions that you make to an organization. I understand this is not the Jeffco, this is controversial. This is not my priority. It is not my agenda. But I think we also just need to think about is, it may be someone else's agenda. Might there be an association that decides and comes forward and says, you know what, we might want to look at it differently.
David?
I would rely on the Human Resources Department of Jefferson County or the district to work on a program to attract and retain the best teachers and jobs that we can, to provide a compensation structure that is equal to and on par with all the other districts that we are competing with. And it's not just teachers, it's support staff. As somebody referenced earlier, my daughter's bus route was just canceled through the end of the year because we have no bus drivers. The fact is, we have a compensation structure problem that needs to be addressed and needs to be looked at. We can attract the appropriate and well-qualified teachers, and I would let the professionals build a program to allow that to happen. I would turn to the same professionals to create a salary structure that is competitive with other districts. And I am a supporter of pay per performance, but that term needs to be addressed. There are dozens and dozens of variables when what that means. There are multiple states that do it effectively. My wife was a 15-year teacher in Arizona that had a very comprehensive pay per performance program, and she was at a school of 4,000 students with a lot of teachers that very much enjoyed it. The fact of the matter is, it exists in every single industry on the planet except education. And there has to be a way, and there is a way, to have an opportunity to tie performance to compensation. And it can be done appropriately, that is healthy for the environment and culture, which also might attract the best teachers where they can make a higher level of income. I think that's an opportunity. It's not a discouraging factor. We can look at it and have it be an opportunity to make sure that the best teachers are rewarded, because there are also some teachers that are not performing. And for those, we have to hold them accountable.
All right, Mary.
As I mentioned, my business specializes in compensation. And so I would bring that experience to the board so I could work with the district and the administrators who are negotiating for compensation for the different associations. One thing I want to mention in addition to our salaries being very low and not competitive with the surrounding districts. But the other costs to our teachers are extremely high, like healthcare costs are astronomical once you get past the individual teacher. If the teacher has a family and they have to put the family on their plan, for instance, my daughter told me that 6% pay increase they got this year, which was greatly appreciated, barely covered the increase in health insurance. So we have to look at the whole package there. When it comes to pay for performance, yes, I came from the private sector. I worked for Hewlett Packard, and yes, I got my raises based on my performance. But we do have to figure out how to put that into a school setting, the education setting. We start by raising the salary, the base salary for base performance. And then we have to figure out a way to award the excellent teachers in a way that doesn't cause anybody to start keeping their best practices to themselves, so that they can demonstrate that they're a better teacher than the average teacher. We want to have the more experienced teachers always be mentors to the new teachers. So it's a tricky thing in education. Thank you.
Kathy?
In my job, I'm responsible for hiring and developing scientists, engineers, and technologists. And the way I have been successful with that is by recruiting the best and brightest. And we do that by looking at the most successful universities across the nation, and then offering really good packages to those employees. So I think what we need to do for teachers is to make sure that we're recruiting from the best education universities, and then also offering competitive compensation packages. So the entire package, including, salary and all of the benefits. Once we get those teachers, we need to retain them. And we do that. We need to take a look at our salary structure and make sure that it's competitive for all of Colorado. And also very important for the development, to make sure that the teachers are getting the professional development that they need to stay satisfied and fulfilled, and to be appreciated in the jobs that they're doing. Also want to make sure that whatever we do, it's got to be a collaboration between all of the stakeholders, teachers, administrators, superintendent, work together so that we make sure that we come up with a salary structure and system that's going to help us to be successful in the long run. Thank you.
Danielle?
Pay for performance as it currently stands is flawed because the assessment tools for measuring performance that we're using are flawed. As a data scientist, I know that there are valid, reliable ways to assess performance. The current ways that teachers are assessed do not comprehensively and adequately reflect how well they are performing. And it is a standard to pay for performance among all the industries, but that is based on a person's performance, not on the scores of others or the social and economic factors faced by families that can determine their success or that success in the classroom. As a professor, I am not assessed based on the test scores of my students, but I am assessed on a holistic, diverse set of criteria that reflects all of the work that I do. In terms of, and I think we need to get there in Jeffco. If we follow that path. For teacher staffing and retention, obviously this is a critical concern. I would start by asking teachers what they need and what will keep them in our schools. But I've been thinking a lot about this, and I'm a researcher, so I've been looking at all the research, and there's a lot of research that's testing out this idea and trying to figure this out. Some of the best research right now says that the ways that we keep teachers is, one, through salary and other compensation, to preparation and reducing cost to entry. We know that strong preparation for teachers can help them retain over time. Looking at our hiring and personnel management, so our timing of hiring, information about hiring process, and making it accessible and easy, reducing barriers in that area. thinking about the induction and support for new teachers. So what kind of mentoring, coaching, and feedback are we giving teachers when they're here, but also just improving the working condition, including around school leadership, professional collaboration, shared decision-making, accountability systems, and so forth.
Jeff?
Charter schools historically and you have difficulty meeting the same pay schedule as the district. The one thing that I think happens on a positive note in charters is that teachers come to those schools because they want to be involved in the type of education that's being given to those kids. So whether it's a Montessori school or a core knowledge school or a Waldorf school, there's an environment those teachers enter and stay in that really doesn't make up for not being paid the same, but certainly compensates, them in a way that's really hard to put a dollar value on. So the loss of teachers in some of the charters is less. And that's also a thing that we know from data. So I think that the environment needs to be improved and looked at. And I think that would help us a lot. I don't pay for performance. That's a complicated thing. And I don't think that we've done a good job looking at it in the past. Thanks.
Thank you all. Candidates, I want to thank you very much for your time tonight. We're going to have 1-minute closings here in a second, but I just wanted to say on behalf of myself as the moderator, this district is going to be very, very fortunate. This has to be one of the classiest and most knowledgeable group of candidates I can imagine. So we're going to do 1-minute closings. It's Kathy, Mary, Jeff, Danielle, Teresa, David, and Paula. So Kathy, you're up.
Thank you. Our kids deserve great educational and extracurricular opportunities. We have one chance to get it right for them during their most formative years so that they develop academically and are physically, socially, and emotionally healthy. Kids deserve to be happy and secure in their futures. They also deserve to be prepared to succeed in their futures. This is a critical election. We can't keep doing things in Jeffco the same way and expect different results. I have the skills, experience, and passion necessary to work as a team and get Jeffco schools back on top. I have 20 years technical and business experience, 10 years of coaching experience, and 17 years experience as an active Jeffco parent. I know how to set high expectations and I know how to execute. I want to help Jeffco students and I would appreciate your support and your vote. Thank you so much for your time today. I'm Kathy Mix. I'm running for District 5. You can find out more about me and my priorities on my website. And I also have many endorsements from former players and people that I work with on my website.
Time.
Mary Parker.
I really appreciate the opportunity to participate in this forum tonight. I feel that my experience as the owner of a business specializing in compensation will be an asset that I can bring to the school board as we work to attract and retain the best teachers and support staff. In addition, my background in parent education and my work as a court-appointed special advocate for children in the foster care system has taught me the importance of having strong, quality neighborhood schools. I've worked with emotional and behavioral support staff, and I can offer my insight in the area of mental health as we recover from the disruption caused by the COVID pandemic. My name is Mary Parker, and I ask for your vote in District 5 of the Jefferson County School Board. Thank you.
Jeff Wilhite.
As a board, we need to make decisions wisely. We need to be responsible. And we need to have a transparency that currently does not exist with the board, and in some ways with the district. If we do all those, then we're going to provide an excellent educational environment for our students and our teachers. My name is Jeff Wilhite. I'm running for Jeffco School Board in District 1. My website is wilhiteforjeffcostudents.com. I am asking for your vote. Thank you.
Danielle Varda.
It's a great time to be a part of this Jeffco community. Our kids are doing amazing things. Our teachers and staff started this year with hope and enthusiasm, and our community partners are ready to build this great system together. But we're also faced with great challenges. We're having to step up to keep each other safe. We're in the midst of a staffing shortage due to our inability to fairly and competitively compensate teachers and staff. And we have an achievement gap that means we have to commit to equitable practices and resource allocations across the district. So there's a lot of work to do, and I have a reputation for accepting challenges, working collaboratively, and doing the hard work to succeed. And I'll bring that dedication, drive, and commitment to do what's right for our kids to the board. Thank you for the opportunity to participate today. I believe I'll be a successful board member when I've served our district in my role to meet our ends with good governance, value alignment, and support for all educators and service to our kids. I hope for your vote.
Teresa Shelton.
I grew up knowing the value of hard work and the value of a high quality public education. And I am proof that anything is possible if we have and are given the right tools to succeed. All of us here today want something more for our children. I want that too, for your children, for your grandchildren. But the operational, financial, and governance experience that I bring to the board table will help me do more than just want that change. It's the type of experience that will be necessary to help actually make some change. And it is not a solo effort. I have been very excited at some of the things I'm hearing that where the district is heading. And I would very much look forward to collaborating with the superintendent and her team and with our existing board members to help move this mission forward. Check out Shelton for jeffcostudents.com to learn more about me. And governing requires listening to everybody, whether or not the topic they want to talk about is something you agree with. Thank you for your support.
David Johnson.
I think the role of a board of directors is to support and hold accountable the excellent staff in the company. We have gone out as a district and hired an awesome superintendent, a brand new CFO. And my experience with the district staff is they are extremely professional. So there's nothing worse than a board member with a personal agenda. So my commitment is that I will work collaboratively with the board to ensure the safety of our kids and hold them accountable for their performance. I've served as a CEO for very large boards. I have been on boards with excellent CEOs. I have the experience to make sure that the cooperation of the 5 board members and our awesome district staff comes down to maximize student performance and financial performance.
Paula Reed.
So in my 30 years of teaching, and especially when you teach high school, so you teach a lot of kids, I've taught literally thousands of students in Jefferson County. And that means that I have known our kids as individuals by name. I have known their gifts, I have known their challenges, and I have cared about their futures. And my life has been deeply enriched by them. So I'm just going to tell you that I do have an agenda, and my agenda is our kids. They will be first and foremost the most important thing in every decision that I make. I realize that there are lots of levels of expertise and types of expertise that a board needs. And I'm so excited to see so many options for people who have that. But I think there's also a lot to be said for having an educator on the Board of Education. So I'm asking you to vote for me. My website is Paula Reed for jeffcoschools.com. Thank you.
Jana.
Please join us in thanking all the candidates, our moderator, speakers, and volunteers for their time tonight. A recording of this forum will be made available the next day or two. Stay tuned to our websites and our social media.
Again, we'd like to thank you all for caring and showing up to support our schools. Election Day is November 2nd, 2021. And please remember to vote. Register, you can still register to vote at govotecolorado.com. And please stay tuned to supportjeffcokids.org and jeffcopta.org for the recording to share.